The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Big Ben Haslar presiding. We all rise for the Honorable Judge Haslar. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we're hearing the case of The People versus Battle Los Angeles, a 2011 sci-fi war film that aims to offer a gritty, realistic depiction of a squad of Mariners resisting an alien invasion force in the streets of LA. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we're here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are being considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Today, we are looking at a movie that is guilty of several cinematic offenses. Battle Los Angeles combined two great genres, war and sci-fi, but it somehow managed to get the worst out of both genres. The sci-fi undercuts the tension we should be feeling for the soldiers, like we do in Hurt Locker or American Sniper, Black Hawk Down. I mean, take your pick of any modern war movie. The military realism, on the other hand, takes the urgency out of the sci-fi elements. What would be insurgents or rebels in a war movie, they are just Alpha 5 looking robots in this. So what we are left with is a muddy military movie malaise. My remaining arguments will continue to focus on the military side of the film, mostly the overabundance of cliches. And on the sci-fi, we're looking at a case of, quote, stupid alien invasion. So please buckle up and get comfortable as I guide you through the grayscale shaky cam nightmare that is Battle Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slender. And appearing on behalf of the defense...
Is anyone hearing that sound? Like, what's that? You hear that?
Is that an alien invasion? Yes, I do hear it.
It might be the aliens.
It might be an alien invasion.
Oh, our defender has summoned them.
Okay.
Appearing on behalf of that defense is Mr. Jonathan Maberry. Please present your opening statement.
So the thing about a movie like Battle Los Angeles, it does have cliches in it, but then almost every war film does, even some of the best ones, like Black Hawk Down and Saving Private Ryan. Some cliches are built on actual things, actual events that happen within a story, and they borrow on those to create a framework to tell this invasion story and a response story. It has a historical significance in that it was inspired by the actual Battle of Los Angeles, or the belief that the Japanese were attacking Los Angeles in 1941, shortly after Pearl Harbor, and there was actually some damage in that regard. So it has some historical context. A lot of the military information is correct in the film. They take liberties, but they take liberties in just about every military film I've ever seen. I don't hold the liberty against it if it furthers the drama, and in this case, it did. Also, you had a variety of characters with different types of experiential perspectives, so that you don't just have one entry into the story, and you don't have one character you need to hang on the whole time, because even though there are some great lead actors, each individual character is given a moment, and those moments humanize the film and allow it to become a deeper and more rewarding experience than the casual viewer might get if they're looking for just science fiction or just military. And it does exceed. It succeeds in places where things like Starship Troopers don't, because it actually has characters we care about, characters that are so realistic we can relate to relate them to other people we know. The film was made without any intention of being cliche or campy. It was intended to be an action film, and it succeeds very strongly in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Maberry. Although I care very much about Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh, I was going
Slender, you may
to
present
say,
your
is
first
he?
exhibit.
I didn't say I did not like the other film. I said it's a better war film, and the other one was a satire of fascism.
It's Dizzy, Rob. Dizzy.
Sorry. You sure? Whose name is Dizzy? Anyway,
Mr. Slender, please present your first exhibit.
We have a lively jury tonight. I like it.
I know.
So, as of this recording, we are about 20 years removed from the start of the Iraq War, which is really a hell of a thing to think about. And we all know people who served. And as a matter of fact, this show has had veterans from that war, David French and Isaac Arthur among them, and we thank them for their service. In 2011, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, they were still hot. The movies that came out in those years before and after 2011 featured a gritty realism, right? A focus on the soldiers as people, not as expendable video game avatars. So here, Battle Los Angeles feels different, right? It is trying to leverage those wars for the commercial appeal of a sci-fi movie. Now, I'm not going to say that's tasteless. I'll let the jury decide. But I could tell you it feels not altogether pleasant. And this is typified by Aaron Eckhart. He's billed as a very competent Marine based on his service, right? He has a record that we don't really have a hard time buying or believing. You know, he took out a whole nest of insurgents, but he lost a couple men on the way, kind of redolent of like Audie Murphy, you know. So he's coming in with that baggage and operates otherwise very mechanically throughout the film. I don't think we see him really emote or grow. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the Marine needs that level of detachment, even against aliens that look like Power Ranger villains. But when you have that, in a way he was, but that's a different case. So when you have that, it doesn't really let us resonate with him because of the silliness that the sci-fi is injecting into it. I would say the most human moment maybe we get in the movie is when Michael Pena grabs the gun for his valiant Last Stand distraction, because we don't really get any of that from any of the soldiers, even though they're all given names and they're all given their own little quippy moments, because it just devolves into them fighting clunky robot aliens. So I would say, to put a button on this point, the sci-fi trappings cause us to lose the depth that we would otherwise get from these soldiers and their stories.
Okay, Mr. Maberry, do you think there's better human moments that the prosecutor is missing?
Yes, I think my esteemed colleague did not watch the same movie I did, because filled with emotional moments.
Hey, I fell asleep only twice, Your Honor.
Including one moment that I thought was one of the most poignant scenes, not only in science fiction, but in any war film I've seen. Specifically when the character Lockett is calling Eckhart's character on the fact that he did get an entire platoon killed before. His brother was part of that platoon. And because Aaron Eckhart's character is so strong, Staff Sergeant Nance is so strong, he's trying to keep it together. Now, before I get into what that scene is, I just want to mention one point. He's a staff sergeant, and he's definitely up there in years. There is a traditional promotion schedule. X number of years you will automatically get promoted, or you should get promoted, and yet he's back down to staff sergeant, which means he's probably been in trouble before, and he is trying to keep himself in shape, maybe not going up against his new lieutenant, trying not to take over the command because he's had some problems in the past. So that's implied by the fact that he's an older staff sergeant. But the scene with Lockett, he's talking to his brother, and he says, "You want to do this now? Okay, let's do this now." And he starts not only naming all of the men that followed him into battle and died, but giving their rank and serial number from memory. He remembers every one of them. And when he gets to Lockett's brother, his voice breaks as he's talking about this. It's focused on his face, and Aaron Eckhart's giving this brilliant performance of someone who is barely keeping his emotions in check. And then we cut over to the face of the younger Lockett brother, and we see a tear fall as he's feeling this, not just hearing the dialogue. And it's not a glycerin tear, they dropped it, and the actor actually broke into tears during that scene. 5 takes to get that scene right. 5. Because there was so much emotion in that moment where the actors were caught up in it. They were hearing the deaths of characters that were not even in this movie, they're referred to, and yet they feel them. So that moment is one of the most powerful emotional notes in the entire thing. And I've seen so many war films and so many science fiction films. That kind of scene could have fallen completely flat in the absence of excellent direction and acting. But instead, it rose into a moment that it chilled me. And even though I watch this movie a couple times a year, I still get a tear in my eye at that scene. It does have emotional content, emotional weight. And yes, there are cliche moments. The guy shopping for flowers before a wedding, and one of those guys is getting killed. That's you might as well just shoot him at that scene. We've seen
in the flower shop.
There are other films where you have a soldier looking at the picture of his wife or a puppy or something. He's dead. Okay, so there are some cliches, but when those deaths play out, we have not just their death. We also have a take on the actor who is losing a friend, losing a brother in arms. And as a result, what we're feeling is little emotional notes along the way. Instead of stopping for a big maudlin dramatic moment, there are little emotional moments along the way that make us feel like these people, these actors, these characters are real people.
Maybe Mr. Schlender is the real emotionless robot in this courtroom.
I agree.
Cyborg, please. But that's kind of, so I understand what Jonathan's saying, right? Where you do have those moments of them interacting, getting face to face, getting very emotional. But then you have to remember they're being attacked by giant alien cyborgs. And it really kind of undercuts a bit of that realism and a bit of that emotional depth. So that was the point I was making about that, is just that the juxtaposition between these kind of weird sci-fi elements and trying for those emotional moments is ultimately what makes it land flat. But I can move on to my next point.
Let me rebut that for a second.
Yeah, please.
Because along the way, when they first started encountering these things, from the very first time these soldiers, the Marines rather, are in there at the base and they're watching things on TV, their reactions are human reactions. I mean, these are guys who are trained to be tough, who are trained to be able to contain their emotions in crisis situations, and yet they're reacting. And then when they are out in the field, they don't know what they're going to encounter. They don't know the level of it. And when they try different things and they find out that the normal training they have is not adequate to the situation, because we're trained to fight human beings. You shoot somebody in the heart, they fall down. But the aliens, their bodies are oriented differently. Their internal organs are in a different place. So the learning curve results in the deaths or injuries to several characters. And we see the crisis mount within those characters as they lose faith in their own training. It's there on the screen.
Yeah, and then we have the leader yelling, "I lost 4 of my own men." God damn, All
right, I don't want to hear any more about emotions. Move on to something else.
Okay, Your Honor. So this dovetails into my next point, kind of about the sci-fi trappings, right? Because it's really easy to bifurcate this movie into the military side and the sci-fi side. Already talked about the military side. Let's talk a little of the sci-fi. So what do we have? Aliens invade, but we want to make it look gritty and realistic, very evocative of Spielberg's War of the Worlds, I would say. Ultimately... for the movie, maybe, yeah, sure.
Save it for another trial, Haslar.
That's what it was going for, though. It was trying to make what is a realistic alien invasion look like. But what if it's also highly stylized vis-a-vis being very militaristic? And the aliens are essentially using conventional weapons and tactics, right? These are aliens that are smart enough to fly through the stars, come to Earth, land on Earth. And what do they do? They just mount a ground war, in random cities. And now here's the other thing that doesn't really work with this. We're so zoomed in on these soldiers. They start dispatching the aliens with comparative ease. There's no huge alien set piece of technology, something that would be like, like Independence Day, where they figure out this core weakness. They basically just find a forward operating base and blow it up. It's anything that could have happened in any movie about like Iraq, Afghanistan, even Vietnam, if you prefer. It could have happened in any war movie, and the sci-fi veneer over this doesn't do enough to elevate the genre. This is another example of how the two genres are fighting against each other, and it just ultimately doesn't work. And again, we're only seeing such a small piece of this alien invasion. It's very hard to feel the stakes, because if you agree with me and you're not emotionally resonating with these cold characters, you don't really care so much. They're gonna die. Now, if you agree with the defense and you are resonating with them, well, maybe that's enough to stay so zoomed in. But if the world is being invaded, let's see more of that. Let's have an idea of the scope and scale, even if we do bring it back to this small platoon of soldiers.
So you're arguing that you want to see Battle New York as a sequel?
There was rumors of doing Battle Paris. Why would so that wouldn't be a bad deployment.
I pass it to the defense, though.
Yeah. So the thing about the science fiction, got to look at the nature of what they actually present. All of the technology is in one way or another drone. The air power is drone. Even the on the ground forces are controlled in one way or another through either cybernetics or something else. They are attached to their mothership, their invasion ship, which suggests that there is not a big governing intelligence or an advanced group on the ships. The ships may be coming to a number of planets just on a resource scavenge hunt. And that's the tone I got. It was not a full-blown invasion where they're trying to do Independence Day and blowing up full cities. They're there to get something. It's hinted that they're trying to get the water. That is one area where I will say the science fiction falls flat, because there's more water and ice in the asteroid belt than is on Earth. And that's easier to mine. But we see that in a lot of films.
Like Fiji water.
Hey, that's my third. That's my. Don't step on my third point, Mr. Defense.
But in terms of the tech, yes, they have relatively comparative. I mean, they use blasters, laser blasters of some sort, pulse rifles, rather than bullets. But we don't, just because they've traveled a great deal of distance doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of their culture is commensurately as technologically advanced. I would argue that wasn't the intention, to show a culture so far advanced that a win is easy. It's a little more like sending Columbus and his ships, and the early settlers to the early conquistadors, rather, to the Americas, the groups that came in to colonize. They had flintlock rifles. That's not. I mean, that's more advanced than a bow and arrow, but it's not hugely more advanced than it. And yet, the culture level, the disparity between, say, the Apaches and the Empire of Great Britain, they appear to be vastly different. But when it came down to the combat, it's still people throwing stuff, whether it's an arrow or a bullet. It's not that different. So,
well, yeah, in that historical example, but we're talking about an alien race that's mastered space travel to some degree. We are talking about, at a minimum, huge nuclear reactions. We are at minimum talking about an entire race of aliens that have been able to band together and explore the stars for resources, which would imply that they've at least been able to harvest and utilize all the energy of their sun. To put things in perspective, that would be like a class 3, whereas Earth right now, we're class 0, because we basically use fossil fuels still. Like, we haven't even harvested the energy of all of the energy of our sun, all the energy of our solar system, all the energy of the near universe, in the way that kind of intergalactic travel would take.
Are these Star Trek rules?
No.
Applying rules.
Allow me to respond to that.
No. These are, you can watch Isaac Arthur's videos like I did in preparation for this, where he explains how all this stuff works.
How do you know they didn't fold space or something? You don't know.
All right, yeah. So going to the technology, there is no indication they've learned how to harness the power of their sun. Yes, probably nuclear power. Sure, we have that too. But in terms of travel, the technology of travel does not necessarily mean the same technology in conquest. Being able to travel to other star systems, and it would not be intergalactic, by the way, probably interstellar. The distances between galaxies is a little too far to go. Interstellar, right? 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. So interstellar travel, there are a number of theories that have been put out there. Folded space is one of them, and there are a few others. I'm actually writing a novel now dealing with quantum entanglement and its ability to possibly be the way we go faster than light and so on. Cool. So, but that doesn't necessarily stand equal to the weapons that they get there. They may not have needed better weapons before. Our weapons usually advance in a competitive environment. We're fighting ground wars and air wars against Japan and Germany during World War II. The nuclear bomb was used as upping the game. Well, maybe they haven't needed to up the game. Maybe their technology was so efficient for any planet they have gone to before. And also, they wouldn't want to use nuclear weapons if they're coming here to steal resources. You don't want to pollute the environment that you're going to be exploiting.
Well, not if they're going to be harvesting our seawater. You can nuke a city. So it's kind of like the Harry Turtledove argument in his World War II books, where the aliens were so complacent in their technology they couldn't keep up with human development.
I actually need to object to one of your statements here.
Okay.
You said that if they wouldn't need nukes, they just nuke cities, it wouldn't affect the seawater. Of course it would. Nuclear, atomic radiation spreads and moves according to cloud patterns and wind patterns, and rain makes that.
Okay, but there would be a lot of ocean that would be safe.
All right, order in my court.
Okay, so
I think the jury can decide on whether they believe about wind patterns in this nuclear hypothesis we're going on. Please, Mr. Schlender, move on to your last example.
I don't know if you're qualified to believe in that or not.
I do. I just have one last point, and we've kind of touched on it a bit, so I'll be brief. And it really is just all the cliches, and whether you want to pick the military genre, the sci-fi genre, all the military talk felt like it was 100% lifted from like HBO's Generation Kill. Everyone is slick and peppy. Like, we get it. You're Marines, hoorah, all that good stuff. You're the best of the best. And then we have the sci-fi side. The aliens are invading for water, which even the defense admitted is a stupid reason to invade Earth, to say nothing of the asteroid belt, to say nothing of Europa. You don't even have to get within sniffing distance of Earth to get tons of water. And a quick shout out again to our good friend Isaac Arthur, who did the episode Dumbest Alien Invasions, where he really breaks down why invading for water is stupid, but really it is just because water is incredibly abundant everywhere. And then again, why are they sending in ground troops? What if they are there to harvest the water? They can travel there, they can suck it up, maybe. It's just, they're doing a ground invasion so we can do all the military stuff. It's very self-serving. And with that, I will rest, Your Honor.
They didn't even invade for Fiji water. They went for LA water, which is not good water.
We are making a lot of assumptions as to that being their actual end game.
Actually, I do have a quote from the director, Liebesman. He said at a Comic-Con panel he confirmed that the alien attack, quote, the aliens attack over natural resources, specifically mentioning the fact that Earth is 70% water. So the director did confirm that. And so take that for what you will.
Stupid director.
The director confirmed that was one of its purposes. And I agree that's not the best one. I can point to a flaw, even in great movies like Aliens, which is one of the greatest science fiction movies ever done. They left no anchor watch on the ship. There's nobody left on the ship. That's a complete flaw. It does not spoil the rest of the movie.
No.
Well, we'll let the jury decide that.
Mr. Schlender has rested his case. Mr. Maberry, you may present any exhibits you have in support of the film.
Okay, so what we have here is what the ground troops know, and on both sides. Like now, the aliens, they're told to create a beachhead, to establish a beachhead for whatever reason. We don't know if the secondary wave is coming with the brains who are going to either occupy or whatever they're going to do. All we know is they're there to do a beachhead. The average soldier, Marine, or sailor does not know the full plans of the military, even when they're given their orders to go into battle, they're given just what they need to know to accomplish a specific mission. And what we're doing is following that group with that mission with limited intel, and then with a cutoff of being able to get further intel when radio and all communications go down, the FOB is blown up, etc. They're disconnected from any intel the military might have learned since they were put on the ground. And that puts them in a position where they're trying to figure it out based on limited intel. And that is a very confusing thing when the intel doesn't match the situation. It's kind of like that old saying that no plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, this is a great example of that. And it's built into the story of this. They went in there certain, because of their history of their group and their own effectiveness in training and so on, that they should be able to resolve the situation. It's a simple rescue. Turns out that their level of training, as good as it is, only took them so far, because they need, a military group on the ground is supposed to be fed updated and continual intel. Live intel in battle is one of the reasons, say, America's military is so effective, because we can constantly update the situation for the men on the ground. But if you go back to, even Vietnam, we didn't have those types of satellites. We didn't have that type of communication. The soldiers were in more stressful situations because they felt abandoned, whether deliberately or by circumstance, by the group that is giving them the support. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a group abandoned. A lot of the trash talk that they do. I know a lot of military guys. I've written a whole bunch of military science fiction novels, and they use a lot of the trash talk because it helps them not be afraid. It gives them something to say when otherwise it would be a complaint or a cry for help. So instead they trash talk. And that trash talk has its value, as corny as it is, but it's the same trash talk real troops use in real combat, because that's that whole booyah thing. It's the whole thing of, I need to be strong, so let's bang each other's helmets together and pound on one another and say this and curse like sailors. I mean, all of that's designed to keep the adrenaline flowing, to keep you in the moment, and to make you think you're as tough as you're supposed to be. The film, to me, is less about the science fiction, though it's there, and some of the stuff in it's pretty fun, but it's more about soldiers in a situation beyond their experience, and a situation that forces them beyond the level of their training, without the ability to be able to go back and get fresh intel that can help them reset and reapproach the situation with a stronger force. And we don't see that, in fact, till the end of the film, when they crack information about the command center, the command network. Once they understand that, then they're able to make field decisions, and it's Sergeant Nance who's able to do that. Once he gets more intel, he's able to then apply that, using his own experience as somebody who's been in the military for a long time, to come up with a plan that gives them a chance to turn the tide. And then we see the alien forces not able to deal with that. So again, you have two ground forces that are constantly shifting who's on top and who's not. And in both cases, they're, our side loses the communication for a while. Their side loses communication dramatically enough that gives us the advantage to take Los Angeles back.
Mr. Schlender, do you have a rebuttal?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but I think what Jonathan's saying is, when you look at like how the soldiers are acting and reacting, and then you put that up against the fact that they're fighting aliens, that's what I keep coming back to, is just that the aliens don't look the part, they don't feel the part. Like this feels...
So, question from the bench, would you buy the film if it were the same but it was not an alien invasion?
Well, I was gonna say, like, this movie feels like they could have just cut and paste any like insurgent story from like Iraq, right? Like this could have been about any like Middle Eastern conflict that we were having
with
at
robots.
the time. But but that's the thing, though. The robots were behaving and acting very much like conventional insurgent soldiers, though, with the proviso that like they're harder to kill, and you had to have the vet scene of trying to figure out, where do we shoot them? The head's always a good guess, and we don't get a really satisfying.
Not everyone keeps their
resolution
genitals
on
in the
that.
same place, Mr. Slender.
This is
Thank
true.
you.
That's
All
been
right,
established at this court before.
So I have a couple of things to say about that. First off,
Sure.
I don't know how much training you've had with firearms while running, while under fire, but headshots are real hard.
No, that's true. I'm not saying they're not, but where else are you going to be aiming?
I can vouch that Schlender's a good shot.
I actually am, but not a running and shooting guy.
You had a follow-up, Mr. Maberry?
Yes. An example, years ago, I was writing a book called Zombie CSU, and I went and worked with SWAT teams to come up with information on how realistically it would be for SWAT teams to retake a city or retake the streets, based on the stupid sequel to 28 Days Later called 28 Weeks Later, where you had snipers in an elevated firing position going down to the street and, of course, getting chomped. So they showed me with live fire drills, and this is your tax dollars, at work. Live fire drills showing how they would do it, but also showing how few headshots even trained SWAT guys can do while running under fire. 1 out of 27. That is not a good mark. We're talking about SWAT, highly trained shooters, snipers, a lot of them ex-military. 1 out of 27 while moving, because it is such a hard thing. And also, since in the movie they established that the heart was in the wrong place, right? Whatever killed them was in the wrong place. If you're shooting somebody, say in a zombie story, for example, any headshot will not take a zombie down. Only the motor cortex would take a zombie down, or the brainstem. All the shows get it wrong. Walking Dead, all of this, they all get it wrong. Only the motor cortex or the brainstem would take a zombie down on the first shot, which means you could actually hit the target several times without doing damage, just as they were learning while hitting the shots in the body. Now, if it didn't work, Nance would have kept trying until he found another sweet spot. So that's one point. Second, there's in all of these stories, there's a bit of a learning curve. And in Night of the Living Dead, one of my favorite zombie films of all time, they don't do it right until they learn how to do it right, and then they can do it better. And we see that learning curve in the movie. It's part of it. When you look at when the film was released, 2011, right? 10 years, almost 10 years after 9/11, it was about a month short of 10 years. We were actively in a war, and it was a war that we did not win easily. We're going up against guys with AK-47s and RPGs. We have the most sophisticated and largest military in the history of our world, and after 20 years, we didn't win that war. So that plays a lot into what they were thinking about when they were making this movie, because there's a certain thing called the arrogance of power. We assume we're going to win. Our training, our technology is going to win, and it doesn't always. So the arrogance of power goes back and forth between the humans and the aliens. And I do like, by the way, that they're just ground force grunts, because that's exactly what they're facing. It's basically the Marines against the Marines. I mean, they even come out of the water. It's the alien Marine Corps. They're not flying the drones. They're not in the fighter planes. It's ground troops, because ground troops usually establish enough area for them to land technology like their command and control center. Without them having taken Los Angeles, they could not inserted that command and control center in place that would allow them to then operate their aircraft and use the air dominance to beat us back.
Do you have any further exhibits, Mr. Maberry?
Well, the other thing is you also have a whole bunch of actors who are really good character actors. Michael Pena, who's fantastic. Michelle Monaghan, Michelle Rodriguez. CeeLo actually did a great job in it. All these character actors who, instead of being the pretty boy actors, what they are is they're actors who can get in there and embody a character so believably that we care about them. And I actually do care about all of the characters. There's not one actor who turned in a performance so pedestrian that I would say, oh my God, that's spoiling the film. And it takes a note from Aliens, where you had the Colonial Marines going up against their worst case scenario. But it's the camaraderie, it's the banter, it's some of the trash talk and cliche that feels real and lived in. And I know enough military guys, and they all love this film because they say it's the most realistic combat film against alien invaders that would involve ground troops. If you go to a more sophisticated attack, you would need then to make it an air war. And we've seen that with Independence Day, which was a profoundly dumb, though entertaining film.
Do you have anything bad to say about Aaron Eckhart, Mr. Schlender?
Oh, tons.
But get out of here.
He's a two-faced guy.
No, I know, but it's just like this idea of you have to suspend so much disbelief to buy this idea. Though I know, but to buy the idea of the aliens sending in, like you were saying, like the alien Marines, like coming out of the water, like it could be cool if it was more stylized, but they try to make it too realistic. And I think that clash is going to cause the dissonance in the jury's head, and they'll agree with me and end up voting guilty.
Actually, I think if it had been a CGI extravaganza, it would have lost the human touch. To make,
but they're already aliens. They don't need the human touch.
Aliens, but we've seen in bad CGI films, and I'll point to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. There's so much CGI that you don't have an emotional connection. You can't see the human or the human parallel within the CGI within the alien. With these creatures, there isn't an emotion. They're drones. They're organic drones, and that makes it somewhat more frightening. You're fighting something that isn't afraid of you. Like even in the Avengers, the Chitauri were afraid when the Hulk showed up and smashed that big giant flying thing. They're like, they're shocked. They're a different level of troop. But even in that movie, they're using pulse rifles, not that all that different from the pulse rifles in Battle Los Angeles. So other people think that if you go and keep it a little more close to real life, you can keep the character experiences from being absurd. And also it allows for more practical effects, which allows the actor to react to things that are happening. The explosions and all were all practical effects within Battle Los Angeles. So the actors are seeing the explosions, feeling the shock waves, feeling the force of it, and their reactions then become more realistic. And it feels to me, I think that sells it as a justification for not going bigger with the special effects.
And would you like to rest your case there?
I think I would.
All right. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Schlender, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, this movie is no Hurt Locker. It's no Independence Day. It has combined two great genres and fell flat on both. Military cliches that make your eyes roll, sci-fi tropes that make you scratch your head, and the dirty, muddy, shaky visual vomitorium frame after frame. So let me go ahead and thank you again for everyone listening who served. Thank you for your service. You deserve a sweet, badass movie about your service. You deserve a movie showing the military kicking some alien ass, but you did not deserve this. So in the jury room, look up at that American flag and say we all deserve better. This is America, damn it. Guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. And Mr. Maberry, please present your closing argument.
This is a film about human beings in crisis. And, sure, it's not Hurt Locker, but, a lot of films aren't Hurt Locker, and Hurt Locker is not Saving Private Ryan. Hurt Locker has its own flaws, its own slow spots, despite winning Academy Awards. And I certainly wouldn't flinch in comparing it to Independence Day, though wildly successful at the box office. It's filled with one stupid cliche scene after another, including things that are so ridiculously impossible that they could never happen in any world where physics is a thing. Now, the Marine Corps, as portrayed in this film, are believable. And as I mentioned earlier in my arguments, the trash talk, all of that banter is very real. It's very what they do, and they've been doing it for a very long time for the reasons I explained. They're people in crisis. And as the team gets whittled down, we start seeing the cost of this on each player, to the point where they realize at the end that they are willing to die to win, because it is not about them anymore. When the team first drops, it's about the team, but now it's about winning. And that win is a sacrifice play, and it's a beautiful sacrifice play. It's difficult. People are dying that we've become emotionally attached to. And at the end, I feel the victory is earned by the characters. I feel the victory is exciting. And this is one of those films that I recommend to anyone who likes an action science fiction film or a war film. And I am validated in this opinion by so many people I know, so many of the experts in military and actual active military that I use for writing my best-selling novels that are all military science fiction.
Little plug. Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, Mr. Maynard Bangs, and Mr. Some New John Wayne Shit, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine this film is guilty of being a bad movie. A bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. I thought I was just watching someone stream Call of Duty on Twitch for 2 hours.
Okay, gentlemen, what are we thinking? Rob, you haven't said much.
I've been trying to say lots.
Really interrupted every 5 seconds.
I was helping. I was a little 50-50 on this because, you know, I do watch a lot of war movies, but I went in with the expectation, and maybe this was the trailers and stuff, fault of more of a sci-fi movie, more of a kind of, you know, turn off your brain, lots of fun and excitement. Instead, you get a very gritty war movie against robots, which, you know, again, I was kind of 50-50 on it. But then I think Jonathan said a couple of things that really changed my mind on that. One, that this is a story about, you know, these are U.S. Marines, so they're basically the greatest military power that's ever existed on the world. And how do they find a power that actually one-ups them? Well, you have to, as a writer, you have to go off-world then, right? Something has to come in from the outside.
Someone made some enemies with the Marines, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, I don't want to make any enemies with Marines. I'm just saying these are robot aliens.
Drones.
And drones. You know, and to Schlenzo's point of, like, you know, why would they send in ground troops? Again, we're the most powerful military in the world. We could send nothing but bombs and drones into combat, but we still put boots on ground. You know, and so I just think
we don't invade planets.
You're not in this room. We would
You're
invade
missing
a
the
planet.
point.
We would invade a planet in a heartbeat if we could.
We would. We absolutely
Love it.
would.
Absolutely.
What makes you think we haven't already? And it's just
I know.
hush hush.
I know.
Oh, you're saying this one? We killed all those dinosaurs and took it. But yeah, so Ben, over to you too.
I hated this movie. I thought it was
no.
boring. I did not care for like the military bravado-ness. I don't like most military war films, but that's just me, you know, so I'm trying to take it as a jury who's you know, unbiased in this, but it was not meant for me. It felt paint by numbers as far as like, oh, shooting, more shooting.
A lot of that more.
But what I liked about this trial is the defense had a rebuttal to everything the prosecution threw at them, and not only that, he had rebuttals to the prosecution's rebuttals with all new points. Clearly, Mr. Mayberry has thought about this film way more than I have, which I
too much. One could say a little too much.
Yeah.
I also want to say is, despite what the director says, I don't think they're here for the water. The purpose of taking the water is to fuel their machines and their engines of war. Whether they want to take that
we're just
off
a 7-Eleven
somewhere
to them, is what you're saying.
It's more like we would need gas for our Jeeps
and
tanks when we got to Iraq, but we're not necessarily going for the gas. Although one time we did go for the gas, but that's so that
maybe it is like that. Ryan?
I saw this movie on opening weekend, which is amazing to think that I saw this movie of all movies on opening weekend, and I remembered literally nothing from it. I didn't even remember that Aaron Eckhart was in the movie.
What?
And in watching this, I lost interest almost immediately. Like, it didn't feel this way back in the past, but now I hate the jittery faux documentary shit. I can't stand it. And the production design isn't terribly strong. It's scored like a Michael Bay movie. It's all beige. Not crazy about beige. And I didn't find these characters interesting if they are, in fact, characters. I found it very monotonous and very boring. I would give it like a gentleman's 3. That's me being very generous.
That's what I give
However, I did not expect to walk into this case and listen to the defense's points and go, okay, yeah, well, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Was not expecting to think that way whatsoever. But the fact that I did, I gotta say, well, you didn't make me like this movie, but you got me close enough. I mean, so let's start locking it in, guys. Rob? No, Ben. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, this is not for me, but I enjoy hearing someone else's perspective, and I love it. Like, even though I'm not going to watch this film again, I love hearing someone who has thought about it more than I have. I like deliver points that I didn't think because I was just so mentally checked out. And yeah, there was a rebuttal to literally everything, so I have to go not guilty.
Rob?
This is kind of the movie for me, but I went in expecting sci-fi, and instead I got another genre I like, which is war. Although I don't like modern war very much. It's not as much fun as like the World War II and World War I stuff.
It's fun killing Nazis. That's why those.
Yeah, and tanks and trenches are really fun. That's my style more so. But I did agree with all the points. They definitely put it in a different perspective from me. So if I rewatch this film, like when I'm in the mood for like a Black Hawk Down, then I would be way more into something like this. So I'm definitely going not guilty.
Okay, well, I want to say Dylan put up a good fight, and I don't want to make this a unanimous decision because I strongly dislike this movie. So I'm going to go guilty.
But I'll take the pity vote after
As your prerogative, sir.
Let's go tell that very handsome judge.
He is, isn't he?
Oh, so handsome.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Battle Los Angeles, we find in favor of it not being guilty.
The verdict is so rendered. Battle Los Angeles is free to go. However, I plan to watch Mars Attacks for 24 straight hours to wash the taste out of my mouth, or it is adjourned.
Yeah.
It's funny because we were talking about like if this was just as gritty as it was, except all the aliens were Mars Attacks aliens. Like if Tim Burton did it, and like how much that clash would be really great.
All right, you guys kept on bringing up that they look like Alpha 5, but I thought they looked like the Breen.
I don't know who that is. I gotta think of a voice here. Hoorah! This is Staff Sergeant Stout Jawline reporting to you outside the Reels of Justice. Attend Hut! Dylan J. Schlender, what do you think of that there jury's verdict?
Oh my God, Jonathan kicked my ass. So it was a
He knows jujitsu.
I know, it was a well-earned win, a very well-argued case. I was kind of 50-50 on the movie myself, leaning more towards not liking it, but after hearing John's passion for it, I'm probably gonna give it a solid reevaluation. So I tip my hat to my esteemed colleague for a job well done, and I will see you all later. I don't have to do push-ups, do I?
Yes, you're gonna drop and give me 20.
Ah, damn! I
Why is it always 20?
You are pathetic. You are 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Jonathan Maberry, you are a distinguished individual. What do you think of the jury's verdict?
I appreciate the jury's verdict, and I do understand that it was it was a close win. Dylan made some very cogent points there, and also there are points that I'll consider when I rewatch the film next time. So the arguments were sound, and it was I'm gratified by the win, but I would not have been surprised if it had been a close loss too.
Hoorah! Well, that's all the time we have outside the Reels of Justice. Semper Fi, and let's get to post-trial analysis. Well, some other military jargon. Hoorah!
I got you for 3 minutes.
I got you for 3 minutes.
I thought you said you didn't want to make any military mad.
I think they like that. I mean,
that was flattering, really.
Stout jawline is very...
Jonathan, well done for your first case. That was awesome. Holy cow.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ryan's going to have to watch his back when you come back and take him on.
It's true. You got to work your way up to Ryan, I think. But yeah,
it's true. I'm the easy one. So
I thought you made a lot of great points about this movie, and I also think it kind of was advertised poorly. I associated my brain with something like District 9 that was going to be more sci-fi and not so gritty, boots on the ground kind of war.
I actually agree with that. I think if I had cut that trailer myself, 8/10 of that would have been military going in, and I don't like the shaky cam stuff too. It was of an era. We're not seeing it as much anymore now, and I'm glad to see it go. But it would have been cool if toward the very end of the trailer, we then see one of the creatures rise up, and it's not the war we thought. It would have been more fun. Instead, they did lay heavy on the science fiction in the trailer, and I think part of the reason it didn't do as well is because it sold it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with a lot of trailers. They either tell you too much or they tell you a different story. Like a great example of this, the first Suicide Squad movie, the trailer was awesome. If that movie had actually existed, it would be the best superhero movie I've ever seen. But the trailer and the actual movie, holy shit. You couldn't
they recut it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
ironically cut by the same people. They went in and they re-edited it, and they hired the guys who cut the trailer, and it still didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cases where the trailer is misleading, and usually it's because a different team makes it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, interesting to think about. Now, besides watching Battle Los Angeles, what is it that keeps you busy? What
for
have you
the
been
second
doing
time this
lately?
year, right?
Oh, first time this year, but usually watch it twice a year.
It's early in the year yet.
Early in the year. I actually watched on the plane to Pensacon, where I was going to Pensacola. I was going to a Sci-Fi convention. So, but you were saying, what else am I doing this year?
Yeah, what have you got going on? You got some books
In my
coming
spare
out.
time,
I heard you write a little.
Yeah, I'm actually in a weird phase of my career where I'm writing 4 novels a year, and they're not short novels. I mean, 3 of them are going to be at least 150 to 170,000 words. The shortest one's going to be 100,000 words, and that's the one I'm writing now, which does involve military and aliens, though also cosmic horror. Cool. So I'm writing 4 novels in 4 different genres. I'm editing Weird Tales magazine, and it's the 100th anniversary year of Weird Tales. So we're doing a huge issue, and it's going to be weird, extra weird, because
it better be.
Well, we're not only including some reprints and poetry and flash and so on. I'm also trying to show how wide a scope weird is. So I've got one story from Laurel K. Hamilton, who writes the Anita Blake vampire stories, and they're gritty and edgy and almost pornographic. And I have a story from R.L. Stein, who writes Goosebumps.
Oh, love R.L. Stein.
His pornographic stuff is interesting, though.
I know, it gets weird.
The things you do with teddy bears, I mean, that's just wrong. Also, I'm editing 3 anthologies this year, two of which are already in the can. And we're doing a third one. I'm working on a third one now, pitching more and writing a dozen short stories and doing a lot of Hollywood stuff, because I've got a film just about to move from development to production based on my Rotten Rowan books. And I've got 7 active options, 3 on different projects, 3 of which are heating up really nicely. One may be for Scottish television, one may be for American TV. Bunch of them under NDAs, and I'm doing some fun little projects like writing short stories attached to video game releases and things like that.
Oh, sweet!
And
how many
sadly,
hours of content have you made in your life? I wonder.
What's that?
How many hours of content have you just like put them back to back to back? Like how many?
I don't know. I mean, I'm writing my 48th novel since 2006, and in that same time period, I've written 6 nonfiction books and 146 short stories.
You're catching up,
counting?
And you're catching up to Jeremy Black here. So
all of them unpublished.
But you still have time to join podcasts with the little people. And,
and well, I'm a podcast junkie, so you guys, and also the one other thing is I'm really jazzed that Marvel used so much of my stuff from my run on Black Panther in the new Black Panther film. The character, the fact that she fights Namor, and I worked with Reggie Hudlin to put Shuri in the Black Panther costume in the first place. Mm-hmm. So, to see so much on the screen, my son and I got invited to the world premiere. It was friggin' awesome.
Did you get a royalty check for that?
That's sweet.
No, it's work for hire. You don't get a royalty check, but it made my graphic novel collections of those comics sell like crazy. So
nice.
I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah. And Fate's hand really played in for Shuri on that one. But at least they had a backup plan for it, I guess. So we have you to thank for that. They had something to go with. They didn't have to bring Killmonger back to life. He wasn't really dead.
It's a shame though. And I met Chadwick Boseman. He's a great guy. I mean, what a real hero.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons Phase 5 has gone the way it is that the couple of people they really were going to put on the back it didn't end up working out.
Yeah.
Now we always ask for recommendations for movies that you think people should see. So what is a movie that you think people should see?
Only one? Because I have 2.
Give us 2.
Give it
you
to
one.
Go for
you
it.
one.
Oh, I can't do 2, but he can do 2.
That's your
right.
pick,
He's
Ryan.
a guest, Ryan.
He got yours. You get zeros this week.
Despite the fact that I was good friends with George Romero, and Night of the Living Dead is still the first zombie film. My favorite zombie film of all time is the unrated director's cut of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
High
Good
production
pick.
values, best soundtrack I've seen in any horror film. Great cast. Only spoiled, and this would be something for a future show, by the fact that the credit sequence completely spoiled the movie. The end credits. If you stop watching when the boat sails off, it's the best zombie film ever made.
Yeah, because they get the island and it's
and they all die.
infected. Yeah.
They all die. It's like, take away the emotional weight of having survived all that.
It was the 2000s where those bleak endings, they were really all about them.
It was like the 70s all over again.
But the soundtrack is great. They managed to use Richard Cheese.
Yeah.
And that's
At two different versions of Down with the Sickness. I mean, it's great. The other film, and this is one that doesn't get enough love, and again involves the military, is Dog Soldiers, Neil Marshall's werewolf film. I love
it's set up for our werewolf night that we're going to do soon.
Yeah, I've hosted showings of that at small theaters in different places, and I absolutely love that film. And what a great cast! I mean, every actor in there is really selling his roles, and a lot of people that I like and I have met too. So it's great.
Yeah, no, it's a good one, and there's some of those elevated werewolf movies. It's sort of among those, like what Good Manners is another one.
Yep.
But yeah, more elevated werewolf movies. Hollywood, enough vampires, enough zombies. I want Train to Busan with werewolves.
Oh, that would be good, man.
Yeah,
werewolves are sweet.
That's true.
There was one. I think it's called Howl. Which
yes, you're absolutely right. They did do that. It is called Howl. I have that one. Dang it. You're right. Okay.
Pretty good.
Hot air balloon with werewolves. Go.
Around the world in 80 howls.
Yes.
I love it.
Print it, Hollywood. Send the royalty check here. Reels of Justice, courtesy of Jonathan Maberry. Schlenzo, we gave your recommendation to someone else, but I guess I'll give you one out of pity.
All right. Well, actually, I just also want to take a moment to tell Jonathan that I'm reading the Kagan books right now, and I absolutely love them. You definitely have a knack for the fantasy. Kind of like reminds me of it's like Conan with Cthulhu in it. It's sweet as hell. So everyone get the Kagan books. They're sweet as hell. But this is a movie podcast, so I got to recommend a movie.
All right.
And it's a genre mashup, kind of like Battle Los Angeles, but it's a comedy military movie that doesn't skip on either, and that's 1986's Heartbreak Ridge, starring Clint Eastwood as the tough as hell Marine Corps gunnery sergeant. And what I like about this movie is it will have you laughing out loud at like some of the funny stuff that they're doing, like in barracks in the training, but it also keeps you engaged when the action comes in at the back end of the movie. So Eastwood's character, he's a true force to be reckoned with. He's got a sharp wit, but he's also really tough. You believe he can win a fight. He beats up this really huge dude. It's fantastic. So you'll root for him the whole time. And if you are kind of looking for like these genre mashups, this one is hilarious, but it doesn't skimp on the militaristic daring do. So make sure to check it out. Find it streaming. Honestly, I don't know where. You might have to rent it, but it would be worth it.
I endorse that recommendation.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Big Bun, you're going to have to top that. You are our judge.
I don't know if they'll endorse mine, but we'll see. I'm going to go with another alien invasion film, although of a much different take, and go with Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Before We Vanish. Kiyoshi has a... Yes?
That's a deep dive, man. Okay.
That's Ben.
I got the endorsement.
Classic Ben.
Kiyoshi has a very interesting resume. He directed the previous Ben picks of Cure and Pulse, which I'm sure you all rushed out and checked out.
I did.
But and my thank you note is just lost in the mail somewhere. But Before We Vanish, it exhibits more of his signature touch on the emphasis of loneliness in the Japanese spirit. It has some clear inspiration from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it utilizes Kurosawa's ability to blend different genres to craft a narrative that is different than most any other films you're likely to see. There's some of that age-old question in there about what it means to be human, and as the aliens steal concepts like family or work from people, so that they can pave the way for their eventual invasion. So if you feel like you've seen every kind of alien invasion film out there, give this one a watch and see what you think. Before We Vanish is rentable for $2 on most online platforms.
And that's pretty recent too. That's like 2016, 17, somewhere in there.
Fairly recent. I wanted to say
really
Ryan?
good.
I think 2017.
2017.
Ryan's our walking IMDb.
Our little walk-in library. And Ben, what sake does it pair best with?
I would go for something light and fruity, so maybe a Junmai Ginjo.
Of course. Naturally.
All right.
Ryan, what have you got?
My recommendation this week is very on topic. It concerns a film that was released theatrically days before this recording, and it's called John Wick Chapter 4.
Nice.
You don't need to know what it's about. Either you will see it or you won't. But I love that these movies manage to tell simple stories which merely serve as springboards for increasingly elaborate and varied action sequences designed around visual and thematic motifs. And somehow they get better each time, where other franchises get duller and more repetitive. I wish we got to Chapter 13, where the character would be fighting on the ocean floor and stabbing dudes in the face with coral or whatever, tipping giant seahorse informants with gold coins, but we're never going to get that movie. So go to your local theater, run, don't walk, and go see this little movie that nobody else saw, John Wick Chapter 4.
I love
We'll try harder
independent cinema.
I love those films, though. Talk about why don't they shoot somebody in the head? The man has a bulletproof suit. I'm just
Yeah.
Well, he raises his suit in front of his face. That's how he can propel most of the bullets.
And he doesn't actually keep his brain in his head. It is located elsewhere in his body. They have to find out where.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new one, but I've heard it's great.
It's outstanding.
One day I'm going to watch the John Wicks.
Yeah,
But,
I'll watch it with you. I haven't seen any of
I
it.
Not
haven't
as good a
seen
story,
them.
but it's
Skip
good.
number 2. Maybe skip 2.
No, watch number 2.
I gotta
You
watch
gotta
all of
number
them.
2.
The problem is a movie will come out, I'll put it off, and then a sequel comes out, and now I've got to watch 2. And that's what happened with John Wick. It's what happened with Creed. They just stopped making them, and I'll be able to put a day aside and watch all of them.
Yeah, it would suck if you ran a movie podcast.
Well, when someone puts all the Creed movies on trial, I'll be able to watch them.
When I had to do that Fast and Furious, I had to watch like all 8 of them to catch up to where we were
Nobody
at
told
9.
you to do that. So I'm going to send us on home. War. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Making
Absolutely
new
nothing.
war movies. Say it again. My recommendation this week is the latest and greatest in the genre, 2022's All Quiet on the Western Front, also known as Schlenzo D's Love Life. Got him.
Oh, no.
Based on a 1929 novel, it follows a young German soldier through the horrors of World War I as his ideals about heroism are cut down alongside his dearest childhood friends. This adaptation also incorporates an original secondary storyline about the bungled armistice negotiations, which helps contextualize the infuriating nature of the battles in the final days of the war. The visuals are gorgeously grotesque. I'm always baffled by how they can make sweeping landscapes feel like they're so lived in before they become the bombed out battlefields that the fighting takes place on. I'm not sure this tops 1917 because at least that focused on the winning side. Am I right? But it certainly might be the best war movie we've seen since. However, it is mostly in German, so don't forget your Lesebrilla. Lesebrilla. Those are reading glasses, whatever. All Quiet on the Western Front, also known as Big Ben's Love Life. God,
Boo!
currently streaming on Netflix.
Cool.
I want to see that one. Yeah,
You should.
I just don't get Netflix because it's $20 a month.
Of course, right? They can keep it. But that one's actually, I'd say, if they've released a DVD, just buy it. It's worth.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's got some sweet tanks, and the tanks come out, and you're like, yeah. Thanks for nothing.
The DVD actually would be fun because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of extra scenes, director commentary, or I want to hear more about that film because it's such a good flick.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was so good. I was really impressed.
Where I'm always like, do they have just trenches sitting out somewhere for them to keep making these? Are there production assistants digging trenches to make this movie? It starts to rain. Several PAs get trench foot. It's so meta.
You got a trench machine. It's called the trencher.
You're probably right, but you got to wear your trench coat. But with that, we're all out of show. But we want to thank our guest, Jonathan Maberry, for joining us. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. This has been a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, we had a good time having you. You come
Thank
back.
That's
you.
what happens
and-
when you win.
Yeah.
Well, hey, don't cut Dylan down too hard. He did a real damn good job there.
That's right. He's
Thank
got a stout jawline.
That's going to be his ringtone now. Thanks.
It is. That's the whole reason I made the show, is just to get authors I
come
admire to
on.
come on and compliment me.
Yes, what a great idea you had, Dylan.
And by the way, I almost threw a Jane, you ignorant slut in there when I wanted to do an objection, but I couldn't get the joke anymore.
That's
So
allowed,
that's
and it's allowed on here. It's not even the least it's not even the most disrespectful objection we've ever had. But we hope to have you back so you can slap around Dylan again, and we hope everyone else will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Trash talk.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.